American Express adds a new rule. We're looking at Delta's incentives and also their loyalty program relative to financials. Today is more of a deep dive, but I think a pretty important one that might drive a lot of change in this space. Big favor before we dive in is to give this a thumbs up to help with the algorithm. That way the people that need to see this can see this, and if you know anyone else that might be affected, share this with them. Starting out of the big story, we have American Express adding additional rules. At the moment, it seems to affect Delta personal cards, and there's not really any other way to put it other than it's weird. Starting with the Delta Blue, you may not be eligible to receive a welcome offer if you have or have had this card, the Delta Options card, Delta Gold, Delta Platinum, or Delta Reserve. Side note, this is also the first time I've heard of the Options card. So apparently it was a card from back in 2005, almost 18 years ago. Pretty much the Delta Blue equivalent because it had no annual fee and pretty mid for our purpose. Back to it, the Delta Gold card has similar language. Not eligible for the welcome offer if you have or have had this card, the Delta Platinum, or the Delta Reserve. Here, there's no language about the Delta Blue. Okay, but what about the Delta Platinum? Not eligible if you have or have had this card or the Delta Reserve. Lastly, for the Delta Reserve, you may not be eligible if you have or have had this card. Okay, so what does this mean? I'm actually going to get some markers because I think it makes it more obvious. You have 4 cards. For the Delta Blue, if you've had either this card or any of the above cards, then you can't get the bonus again. For the Delta Gold, it's this card and any of the above cards. Delta Platinum, this Platinum, and the Reserve, and then Reserve is just by itself. On our end, it means that you would want to apply for the Delta Blue first and then work your way up. Note that American Express does have upgrade offers, but they tend to be worse than the intro bonuses, so generally speaking, you'd want the intro bonus. The problem of taking an upgrade offer from, let's say, the Blue to the Gold is that you have or have had this card now, so you wouldn't be eligible for the intro bonus. And this is by the books, but some people will argue that it's really 7 or 10 years, but I don't really want to rely on an exception. If you were to play this, apply for the Delta Blue, and then the Gold. If the Gold doesn't make sense in year 2, then downgrade it to a second Blue. If you value the perks, then apply for the Delta Platinum after. After 12 months of that card, if it doesn't make sense, then either cancel or downgrade to a third Delta Blue. Based off how it currently works, having the card in the past doesn't affect upgrade offers, so theoretically, by having those Delta Blues, you're setting yourself up for upgrade offers. Hopefully that makes sense, but yeah, upgrade offers don't have as many rules as intro bonuses. The Delta Reserve is a bit more of a specialist card given the main draw is lounge access, and it has a pretty hefty annual fee. Given this, it might not make sense to apply for, and I think I'd leave it for later on. Side note, we did do a pretty thorough review of the business version of it on the Ask Sebi business channel, a bit different but still pretty same for our purpose. Main draw being lounge access and maybe spending towards status. Okay, so this whole process sounds pretty reasonable and logical. Is there anything to watch out for? One big one is that American Express does limit the number of these cards, generally to 4, 5, or 6. Theoretically, if you got 3 of these, then you might be actually taking up 3 slots that could go into other cards like the Hilton cards. In that case, it might make sense to actually cancel some of them, especially if you are not waiting for upgrade offers. One key thing though is to make sure that the card is at least 12 months old from any sign-up offer, welcome offer, or upgrade offer. Per the terms, American Express considers it either abuse, misuse, or gaming if you cancel or downgrade your account within 12 months after acquiring it. They may either take your bonus miles, cancel the card, or cancel all your cards. One interesting thing is that American Express is only adding this to their personal cards and not their business cards. So for example, as a filming, the Delta Platinum business does not have this. I think most people would rightfully and correctly assume that this push was on Delta's end. If you do see anything, let me know in the comments or on Instagram and I'll usually dig into it. Either way though, this is a weird move. It very much feels like Delta is in their cutting phase. My fear is that it might have adverse effects. So people like you and me are going to read blog posts and watch videos, and also let people know if there are changes. This affects us because we like bonuses, but we can easily work around this. Think about the person that just sees the Delta Platinum card and doesn't know they have to do this whole tree system and ends up getting screwed. I wouldn't be surprised if it angers that audience. Another good example of this is Card Match. People watching this know they can get elevated offers for American Express cards through Card Match, and that we have blog posts walking through how to do exactly this. That it tends to be the best starting point for American Express due to the elevated offer, and even if you didn't get it, even if you started your relationship already, then you would want to fish for that offer. Another example is that normal people get the Platinum card to show off to their friends, and might not even use all the credits. You guys are probably playing with the Ask Sebi Platinum calculator to see whether it's even worth it. I like credits as much as the next person, but you do need to get value, and some of them are going to be harder to use. If you already started a Delta, then you're kind of screwed, but if you haven't, you know exactly what to do. On that note, if you want to learn about cards, whether American Express or some other issuer, and you want to support the channel, we do have links on the website, asksebi.com, and also down below in the description box. Make sure that you're getting a good offer and that the cards are competitive, but otherwise it is a huge way to support the channel, so thank you guys in advance. Taking a step back, what's Delta trying to accomplish? They're making a lot of changes, but there's a lot of overarching themes. Number one, Delta wants you to spend more money flying with them. They're doing this by removing things like segments and miles and focusing on the dollars, specifically MQDs, medallion qualifying dollars. If you were a deal seeker who earned their status by button seat, and yes, this is a real term, then you're out of luck. For example, in the past, people were able to get status by flying SkyTeam partners like Korean Air or Air France, and especially if you found a cheap rate, it could work out really well. In those cases, Delta was giving you status, but you weren't really making them money. Number two, you still can get status with credit card spend, but they want you to spend even more. In the past, you would need to get 2 Delta Reserve cards and spend about $240K. Now the number's $350K. At the same time, they did simplify the flow and process, especially for high-spending business owners who probably didn't want to learn all the nooks and crannies. Spend $350K is a lot easier than getting 2 cards and then learning about boosts and all this other stuff. This has the added benefit of keeping American Express happy because they get more swipe fees. Number 3, the lounges were full and people weren't happy, so capping access to 6 for the Platinum and 10 for the Delta Reserve made a lot of sense. By adding more limitations, it means that the lounges are less busy, so it's a better experience inside, and also getting into the lounge, because a lot of people couldn't get in. If you're someone that flies a lot, then it's not the biggest deal, but if you fly maybe 1 or 2 times a year, and for those 2 times you can't get in, then it sucks. Number 4, they are making exceptions for high spenders that spend over $75K on their cards in a calendar year. Very much focused on you spending more money. As you can tell, Delta's relationship with American Express is pretty important. Lastly, number 5 is less intro bonuses. With the changes we talked about today, they want to give less intro bonuses if possible, and especially to consumers. I guess for them, they don't want to piss off businesses who probably have more spend. All of this together paints a pretty clear picture. They're looking for more profitable customers. They want high spenders who don't mind dropping the bag, and especially business owners who probably fit into that category. The rationale being that they're probably the ones paying for last-minute business class tickets that cost a ton. They want to keep American Express happy, but they're less focused on appeasing value seekers. Whether that strategy works is the big question. And to be fair, they kind of already do this, but they're leaning more into it. Even back to the shutdowns, American airline fares were about $93 round trip, while Delta started at almost 3 times as much at $247. On average, Delta is charging more for flights. For American, round trip from the East Coast is generally about $240, cross country about $400, and to South America about $500. For Delta, East Coast is about $257, cross country $526, and South Africa $725. By the numbers, Delta is more expensive across the board. You're looking at 7%, 31%, or a 45% premium. There might also be a business and financial reason they're doing this. I spent the last hour digging through Delta's 2022 annual report, and I think you'll be surprised. Loyalty numbers matter, but you might not be part of that. Super fast on investing, but if you want to try out a new brokerage, Moomoo is giving up to 16 free stocks. Offer ends on September 30th, and there's different levels. If you just want to give it a try, I'd probably open the account and deposit $100 to get the 5 free stocks. If you want the share of either Tesla or Google, then I'd probably do the $5,000. You do need to keep the funds in there for 60 days, but pretty reasonable. Also, they are registered and regulated with FINRA and a member of SIPC. That means they're protected for up to $500K, including $250K for cash. Link down below if you want to get up to 16 free stocks. Diving into the financials, you're going to see a lot of focus on American Express and their partnership. In fact, for 2022, the Delta American Express co-branded card grew by 1.2 million new card holders. Remuneration from American Express surpassed $5.5 billion. They make a ton of money. The most recent deal was signed in 2019 and runs all the way until 2029. One thing we've talked about in the past is how a lot of airlines rely on these programs to make money. It's kind of crazy to see it in action. So operating revenue from passengers is $40 billion, and from cargo it's $1 billion. Other, which includes a bunch of things that we'll dive into, is $9.3 billion. Okay, sounds like they make a ton of money from flying. What do you mean? If you look at the operating expenses, almost all of them can be linked to their flying business. Some pretty big examples include salaries, fuel, contracted services, landing fees, and depreciation of their planes. In total, operating expenses are $46.9 billion. If we subtract out the $5.7 from refinery, then we have $41.2 billion. So on one hand, we have about 40 from passengers and $1 billion from cargo, versus the 41.2 operating expenses from flying. You could argue that they're just breaking even from flying. That $9.3 billion from other revenue actually matters. So taking a look into that, we see $5 billion from refinery. The reason for this is because they bought Monroe Energy. The idea being that they would have better control over fuel prices in case that changes. So $5 billion from refinery revenue versus $5.7 billion from refinery operating expenses. Technically a money loser right now, but it can change pretty easily. It's more of a hedge. So even though the $2.6 billion from loyalty program sounds small, it makes up a pretty big chunk of that $3.6 billion in operating income. So the Delta Sky Miles program matters a lot. That means they want to keep us happy, right? Not necessarily. A lot of the changes they're making don't affect normal people. Those people are flying, but they're never getting status anyways. They're trying to keep American Express happy because they're the ones buying and marketing these miles. And by extension, the normal person who maybe flies only 1 or 2 times a year. The one that hasn't been able to get into the lounge because it's been full. As long as people can earn and redeem miles, then they're happy. In fact, 2.9 billion of these flights were redeemed, compared to 35.6 billion that was paid out of pocket. None of the changes that they're making affects the value of these miles. The points, which are their bread and butter, are fine. They do have a lot of points outstanding at about 7 billion, but miles get earned and they get redeemed. So 3.4 billion earned and 2.9 billion redeemed. Side note, the 3.4 billion is considered a liability because it's loyalty program deferred revenue. They got paid by American Express, but the services still need to be performed. So even though we don't like these changes, I don't think it affects the bottom line. And I know people are advocating to protest and to call in to complain. And ironically, Reddit feels a little bit more rational compared to Flyer Talk in this case, given that people on Flyer Talk are suggesting reaching out to Delta's board of directors. I don't think the board would care. The board has a fiduciary duty to the company and the shareholders. Maybe it's just me, but this feels like a mechanism to make more money. And again, I'm not a fan of this because I'm negatively affected, but you gotta respect the move. If you put things into a 2x2 grid and look at it logically, you can kind of see why they might not care. Bottom left is normal people who don't fly that much and they're looking for deals. They don't care, none of the changes affect them. The big draw is business owners and rich people who maybe don't fly that much, but who don't mind paying a lot of money. So now they have a chance of getting status. To the right of them is the consultants and other business people who fly a lot and who don't mind paying for last minute premium tickets. They win because there's less diamond members and less competition for upgrades. For the people that fly a ton but who are deal seekers, we're the ones getting screwed. Of this grid, if you had to screw over someone, I feel like that would be the demo. I think Orange County Commuter puts it pretty well. You might think that they're losing a legion of loyal flyers, but a lot of us aren't as profitable as we like to believe. If you were profitable and you were doing a lot of last minute business class tickets, then it's even easier to get status now. For deal seekers, we have points and cards. Again, if you want to learn about cards, we have links on the website, asksebby.com, and also down below in the description box. If you made it to this point in the video, then leave an airplane emoji in the comments down below and I'll try to heart it and also respond. A few questions for you guys. Number 1 is, what are your thoughts on American Express's new rules? Number 2, are you surprised that Delta is doing all these changes? Number 3, most importantly, is do you think it's even going to hit their bottom line, or do you think it's a well-calculated move? Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. Big favorite, thumbs up, share this with a friend, but otherwise hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.